You've been recording and publishing episodes, putting in time and energy into your podcast, getting 30, maybe 50 listens per episode, but it feels like you're talking into the void. You're not seeing leads join your email list, and sales are either non existent or sporadic. You're starting to wonder if your podcast is even doing anything for your business. Your podcast can and should be getting you clients. Today, I'm going to show you why you're not consistently generating leads and sales from your podcast and how to change that. If you're new to my channel, my name is Andria Singletary, and I've supported over 50 women entrepreneurs in building podcasts that drives leads and sales. The same strategies I teach my clients are the same ones that I have used to sign multiple four-figure clients who found me through my podcast. So they binged a few episodes and joined one of my offers without ever getting on a sales call with me. Just this year, one of my Evergreen Marketing Accelerator clients generated 19 leads in just 7 months for her one-on-one coaching program, which is a four-figure investment. And this was all directly from her podcast, not Instagram, not referrals, not anywhere else, just her podcast. And she said that for every single one of those leads who got on a sales call with her, they said the same thing, that after listening to her podcast, they already knew they wanted to work with her. So your podcast can truly be a pivotal part of your marketing and sales strategy. It's not just for visibility. Like, we're going to shut that down here. Your podcast can be so much more than that. When you use it strategically, it can help you generate leads, nurture your audience, and sell your offers. So, what we're going to talk about today is one, why your podcast content isn't turning your listeners into clients. And specifically, I'm going to break down the 3 mistakes that are holding you back from seeing those conversions, and then how to fix that using the exact podcast lead generation and sales strategy that I use and teach inside the Evergreen Marketing Accelerator. So let's start with the first thing. Your podcast can get you leads and sales. It can be this foundational part of your marketing and sales system. And one of the biggest things that I want to quote unquote debunk here is that your podcast does not only have to be for one thing. It doesn't have to be one piece of your funnel. You literally can use it for the entire funnel. So one of the things I'll be talking about later is creating podcast content for each stage of the customer journey. But you literally can use your podcast to generate leads, nurture those leads, and convert your listeners into your offers. You don't have to just use it for visibility. You don't have to just use it to nurture your current audience. It literally can be your entire marketing system when you create the right type of content. So let's start with why you're not seeing those conversions you want to see. Why your podcast isn't turning your listeners into clients. There are 3 mistakes that I often see happen. So the first one is not planning your content around your offers. This one is huge. If you're going to hit record on your podcast, but you don't know already what you're selling, and when you plan that podcast episode, you didn't already have that in mind, well, your call to action, your offer that you're selling, so to speak, it's going to become an afterthought. And so this is going to result in the second mistake, which is leaving your call to action until the last few seconds of your episode, or not including a call to action at all. Because you're not planning your content in the sense of like knowing what the actual goal or intent or purpose is of the episode, you're not knowing where to lead people. So again, I often see it where people just tack that call to action in on the very end, like the last 5 to 10 seconds of the episode, or they don't have a call to action at all. They give all this value, all this really great information, but the listeners don't know what the next step is. So One of the bonuses I offer inside of the Evergreen Marketing Accelerator is a podcast audit. And so when I hosted the accelerator this last round, I audited several of the ladies' podcasts, and I kid you not, every podcast audit that I did, the call to action was either left for the last 5 to 10 seconds of the episode, or there was no call to action. So I either didn't quite understand like the connection between their episode topic and the offer they were selling. It was a disconnect there, or I didn't know they were selling anything. They didn't tell me what the next step was for me to take after I listened to this episode. And so it was this disconnect there. Yeah, it was really great content. It was lots of valuable information. I took some notes. I knew some things that I could work on and different things like that. But I didn't know what the next step was, or I didn't know how that specific offer was the actual solution I needed right then and there. Then the last mistake is creating content for only one stage of the customer journey. So when it comes to the stages of the customer journey, people talk about them in different ways. There's people who like talk about 5 stages of the customer journey, yada, yada, yada. I keep it simple. I focus on 3 stages of the customer journey. So the awareness stage, the evaluation stage, the decision stage. And I teach my clients how to create content for each of those stages. The reason why is that someone over here in the awareness stage, what they need to hear compared to, say, someone in the decision stage, 2 separate things. The awareness stage person is new to your world. They're filling you out. They're trying to see whether or not you're someone that they vibe with, someone they actually want to continue learning from. Someone in a decision stage, they've binged your content. They trust you. They see you as an expert and authority in your niche, but now they're trying to make sure that your offer is actually the right fit for them. So as you can see, they need to hear 2 different things. But also, the people in the awareness stage, we're not selling to them yet. We're trying to build that relationship first. We're trying to capture their attention and keep them in our world so we can move them along our funnel. But we're not even selling to them yet. But the person in the decision stage, they have some objections, and we need to address those. But the person in awareness stage, they don't even want to hear about the objections yet. So as you can see, if you're only creating content for one stage of the customer journey, you're not speaking to everybody in your audience. You're not helping moving them along the funnel. You're keeping them stuck in that one stage. And so that's why you're not seeing the conversions you want to see. It's not that your content is bad. You're creating valuable content. They're gaining a lot from your content, but you're not helping moving them along the funnel. You're not connecting those dots for them. So these are the things that you need to be aware of. You need to be paying attention to when you're planning your content. Because if you're not doing those things, then you're not going to see those conversions. But let's talk about what we actually can do to see those conversions. So this is giving you a little bit of behind the scenes of my lead generation and conversion strategy. Again, this is what I use with my own podcast, but also what I teach inside of the Evergreen Marketing Accelerator. So it all starts with your planning process. You want to go into each episode before you hit record, knowing either what you're selling or what offer you're ultimately trying to drive people to. Because if you don't know these things, you're not going to be able to guide people to where they need to go. And I phrased it that way because, again, at the awareness stage, we're not selling to them yet, but we still need to know what type of people we want to attract, right? Who are actually the best fit for the offer we ultimately want to drive people to. So these are things that you need to be thinking about even when you're creating that awareness stage content. But the other thing, or the other piece of this planning process, is that you need to plan your episodes around your offers. So there's this thing in education. If you have an educational background, then you know, but it's called backwards planning. And so we're starting with the end in mind. We're starting with the offer first and then planning our episodes, because the offer is going to drive the type of content we're creating for each stage of the customer journey. So if someone is, in that decision stage, and we want to address some objections they have, well, we need to know what offer that we're actually, wanting to sell, or that we're selling in this episode. And so we need to know the offer, because we need to know what objections people commonly have to that offer. So this is why we start with our offer. We are business owners. We are not influencers. We're not here for sponsorships, brand deals, none of that. We're selling our offers. And so our offers, that is the intent. That is the goal. That is the purpose of the content we're creating. And so we need to start with that when we're planning this content. But also, when we outline or script our episodes, knowing what offers we're actively selling, it makes it so that we are naturally selling the offer throughout the episode. So it's not us tacking on this call to action in the very last 5 to 10 seconds of the episode. We're not like, hey, by the way, before you close out of this episode, I have this offer for you. No, we're connecting the dots throughout the episode. We're planting the seeds throughout the episode. We're painting a picture. We're telling a story. Podcasting, a big part of it is storytelling, but we're making it clear as to why they need this offer right now, why this offer is the best fit for them. We're sharing that social proof, so client stories and different things like that. But because we went into recording our episode already knowing what we're going to sell, naturally, we're going to bring this up in different places. So when you're talking about a part of like your framework or your process, you're going to say, inside of such and such offer, I teach X, Y, and Z. Or a client I supported inside of such and such offer went from A to B. Like, we are naturally going to do that because we already know. We planned this episode. We outlined it. We scripted it, already knowing what offer we're actually selling. So this is why you need to go into this already knowing what you're selling, so that way you're not treating your offer as this afterthought, or you're not creating this disjointed experience for your listeners because they don't know why you're talking about this offer. What does this have to do with your episode topic? You want to make it clear for them. You want to lay that path for them, essentially. And that's how you do it. So the last piece of this is creating content for each stage of the customer journey. So I've already talked about this. I feel like I am beating a dead horse at this point, but this really ensures that you're not keeping your listeners stuck at one stage of the customer journey. So if you're creating that awareness stage content, you're not keeping them there. You're moving them along your funnel so that way you're actually seeing those conversions. Because again, depending on what stage of your funnel they're in, they need to hear different information. They don't need to hear the same thing. Like, it's not going to work. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times where you can create episodes where it taps into both stages, but that's not always the case. So you just want to keep this in mind and really looking at what people need to hear at each stage of the customer journey to help move them along. There is a caveat to this. So if you're just launching your podcast, right, and you don't have a podcast audience yet, like, yeah, you can drive your email list, your social media following, and, these places where these other platforms where you've created, built other audiences. Yeah, you can drive them to your podcast, but you also want to create more awareness stage content when you're just launching your podcast. So I recommend, like, if you're doing weekly episodes, so say you're doing 4 to 5 episodes per month, I recommend at least 2 of those episodes being awareness stage content. So that way you're bringing in new leads and you're actively growing that podcast audience. Now, if you're a more seasoned podcaster and you've been building your audience and everything, you may do just 1 awareness stage episode per month and the rest be more like evaluation or decision stage content. Like, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's more so that you need to make sure you're creating content for each stage. Another thing to consider is this a new offer that you're promoting on the podcast? If you are, do you already have people in your audience who would actually be a good fit for that offer? And if you're not sure, like, again, this is looking at, have you pivoted? Have you started trying to reach a new audience, or has your messaging changed drastically? Like, maybe you went from speaking to beginner business owners to more seasoned business owners. These are things that you're going to consider, right, when deciding on what type of content you're creating, especially like thinking about the different stages of the customer journey. It's really looking at your goals, right? It's looking at your intent, right? So these are all the things that need to go into actually planning your podcast content to ensure that it's actually supporting your business goals. It's actually helping you, bring in those leads, nurture those leads, and convert them into your offers. So as we wrap up, I do want to stress one thing. I'm a firm believer in evergreen marketing. And when I say evergreen, I'm talking about long form content. So podcasts, blogs, YouTube. And the reason why I'm a firm believer in it is because this content is searchable and it has a longer shelf life. And for these reasons, it is more supportive of your everyday life. The reality is that we have lives outside of these businesses. Whether you are someone who likes to travel, whether you're someone who maybe you're having to step up and be the caregiver for a relative, or maybe you're like me, you're a homeschooling mom, you have 2 little ones at home. And so you don't have the time or energy to be showing up on social media all the time or, churning out a lot of content. You need something that continues to work for you even when you can't work. And that's what evergreen content does for you. It is the content that continues to bring in the leads, nurture the leads, and sell your offers even when you can't work, even when you can't show up, even when you can't publish new content. So to give you an example, earlier this year, my husband and I started the home buying process. And if you've ever bought a home, you know how stressful it is. They want to know everything. They want all your information. And it's lots of paperwork, having to go through walkthroughs and so many different things. And so I had to step way back from my marketing. I was not able to keep up with my regular podcast publishing schedule. I was not able to send out my regular emails like I normally did. And I completely ghosted social media. But despite all of that, I still signed 2 to 3 new clients monthly. And this was primarily through my podcast. People were still finding my podcast. Even the months when I didn't publish new episodes, I had new listens daily. My content kept working for me. Evergreen content is the type of content that is made for your everyday life. It is adaptable. It continues to put in that work when you can't. Like, your capacity is maxed. You cannot prioritize that right now. And so this is why I'm such a firm believer in this. So this is something to think about, like, especially if you're someone who has a podcast and maybe you've been feeling frustrated that your podcast isn't converting. Don't give up on it. I kid you not, like, go through what I just shared with you in this video and audit your podcast. Really look at, okay, am I, leaving the call to action for the very end of the episode? When I'm planning my episodes, do I already know like what offer I want to sell? Or am I just picking random topics and then throwing a call to action at the end? Or am I not including a call to action at all? Am I creating content for each stage of the customer journey, or am I only speaking to people at the certain stage of my customer journey? Audit your podcast. Look at all of that, okay? It's going to make a difference. Making those tweaks and those changes, I promise you, you will see a difference. I've seen it with my own podcast. My clients, they see the same thing. They make these simple tweaks and it's just like, oh my gosh, like this was the thing that I've been missing all this time. Like your podcast can work for your business. It doesn't have to be this thing that consumes your time and your energy and you feel like, is it worth it? It can very well be worth it. So, now that you know your podcast can drive leads and sales, you know the 3 mistakes that are keeping your podcast from converting, and you got behind the scenes of my podcast lead generation and conversions strategy, that's going to help you create podcast content that converts. You know these things, you got it down. Go back and watch the video again and take notes if you need to. But if you're still not sure, like, okay, I hear you talking about, creating content for each stage of the customer journey. I get that. But what does that actually look like for my podcast? I got you. This is one of the things that I teach inside of the Evergreen Marketing Accelerator. So you get one-on-one support from me. And part of that one-on-one support is me actually helping you map out your podcast strategy. So we really look at what type of content you should be creating for each stage of the customer journey, but you also get access to my content prompts doc. Now, this is a Google Doc that has different content prompts for each stage of the customer journey, and it's literally just for you to brainstorm content topics. So you literally will create one for each one of your offers and you will have 50 plus content ideas for each stage of the customer journey. Like it is that good. My clients, they've used this and it was just so eye-opening for them at like different ways they can actually talk about their offers and really engage with their listeners and whatnot. And it makes a world of a difference. It ensures that they're creating content for each stage of the customer journey and moving their listeners along their funnel. So if you want that level of support, if you really want to make your podcast like the foundation of your marketing, where it's bringing in those leads, nurturing them, and converting them into your offers, you need to get on the waitlist for the Evergreen Marketing Accelerator. The waitlist is open right now, and when you join the waitlist, you'll save $300 on your investment, as well as you'll get an additional support from me, so additional month of one-on-one support at no additional cost to you. Also, there are a couple of bonuses available. I kind of mentioned them earlier, but if you already have an existing podcast, I will audit your podcast. Or if you're in the process of launching your podcast, you'll get a podcast launch strategy session where I will help you map out your entire podcast launch and provide you with the resources so that way you can launch your podcast without feeling overwhelmed and knowing exactly what you need, everything from the equipment to the strategic side of things. So you'll get that as long as you join the accelerator before January 1st. I'm going to be opening the waitlist or opening the enrollment to the waitlist soon. So click the link below to get on the waitlist. All right, if this video was helpful for you, make sure you hit that subscribe button, share it with one of your business friends, especially if they have a podcast or if they're planning to launch one, they need to watch this video. And then hit that like button so I'll know to make more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.